I wonder, you hope that Texas does a good job of defining and creating clearly defined rules, for us to go by. But God, can you imagine if we end up with something like Ohio where you've got, severs in time and you've got at least two sides of the estate and hope that it works out. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. And unfortunately,
wow.
Brent, that's kind of the state of the world right now. So the five or six lawyers who are really handling this topic, and several of them are located in Northeast Texas because they are in the heart of it, right?
Backyard. Yeah.
We've all had multiple conversations about how are you handling it? Like, what are you advising clients to do? So there are a couple of groups out there that are just hell bent that the surface owner is going to end up with lithium. So you're seeing them only take brine leases from the surface owner. There's not all downside to that effect until lithium gets the benefit of being the mineral estate, which in Texas, minerals are the dominant estate, right? That's what allows us
Mhm.
to go drill oil and gas wells without having to go get a surface use agreement. We all do go get surface use agreements because we want good relationships with the surface owner, but technically in Texas, you
Don't
don't
have
have
to.
to.
Yeah.
And had plenty of surface owners surprised when they see a drilling rig rolling up to the front gate that they had no idea was coming. And we need right now, until lithium gets the benefit of being part of that dominant estate, we need to go get the imprimatur of the surface owner in order to produce this brine. I mean, until we get the benefit that oil and gas gets from being part of the dominant estate, you got to go do it. So it's something you need to go do. But if you are of the opinion that lithium is eventually going to be part of the mineral estate, you need to go take the mineral estate too. So what's the answer? Do you go get a stipulation between the parties on who owns the lithium?
That'll never
And
happen.
then
Good luck.
welcome to 6 months of negotiating. Do you just roll the dice that it's going to be part of the mineral estate? And if I am a betting man, I'm betting that the mineral lobby in Texas is good enough that it is going to be ultimately declared part of the mineral estate. Um, but how do you divide payments between a surface owner and a mineral owner once you start producing? And
I mean,
all of
it's
those questions are really good ones that don't have clear answers.
yeah. So what to follow up on Arkansas? What did Arkansas's legislature rule on ownership of the lithium?
Yeah, so they gave it to the surface owner, and that is subject to this weird doctrine. And so they have a you, you're talking about Ohio, where they kind of look at things like intent on.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I misspoke on Arkansas. They gave it to the mineral owner. Their statute specifically defined the word mineral to include, quote, salt water whose naturally dissolved components or solutes are used as a source of raw materials. So we have a blueprint in Texas if we want to give lithium to the mineral estate. We have a blueprint in Texas for what they do in Arkansas. Now, the one carve out in Arkansas for the statute that gives it to the mineral owner is that weird case I talked about earlier. I think it's called Stro Hacker, is the name of the case. And that looks a lot like that Ohio thing you were talking about earlier, Brent, where they look at the date of the severance and what was the intent of
Yeah.
the parties and was it valuable at the time. And that can create a bunch of weird litigation. And in fact, there's kind of a cottage industry in and around Magnolia at the moment where a few lawyers are
Know
trying
how to
to
weasel around it, and yeah.
are trying
Yeah.
to bust some leases based on that Strohacker doctrine. But yeah, the Arkansas statute settled all that. So people go and get the mineral estate and they produce bromine, and it's boom to this industry. And in fact, the first direct lithium extraction plant uh, is in Southwest Arkansas. I believe just east of El Dorado, and it's called the Lanxess plant, Lanxess, the first commercial DLE plant in the United States. And I mean, it is there for a reason. But the thing that excites me is that they thought that was a good enough brine resource to put a DLE plant there. And they're about 100 to 150 milligrams per liter less than Cass County, Texas.
Wow.
And when you're looking at a 33% increase on the amount of lithium you have in your brine, it just makes a DLE plant all that more profitable. And so I think you'll see a
And
bunch of them start to go up.
God, and you factor in just the commodity price increase that for sure we'll see as you continue to see the use of batteries, and I mean it makes a lot of sense. My question and my curiosity there was, so in traditional oil and gas, you drill a well, and as soon as you start producing, it's declining, right? What have these companies seen with the decline curve on lithium extraction? I mean, is this
Yeah.
something they've got to keep punching holes, and tap new resources, or through that recycling process, I presume they re-inject after the extraction.
Yeah.
What are they
The
seeing? Like, what has the industry learned or observed, at least on that front?
Yeah, the only analog we really have from a decline curve perspective is watching what folks like Albemarle did in brine production for bromine. We don't have a good enough sample size yet on the lithium side to determine what that's going to look like. But if you look at folks like Albemarle for brine production on bromine, they drill a lot of wells. And guys, these wells are not cheap. I mean, they're 10,000-foot vertical wells, but the AFEs on them look like horizontal wells. One of the reasons
Wow.
is you have to build out the casing and the pipe and everything to withstand this really highly corrosive substance that's coming up the wellbore. I mean,
Yeah.
we all know that you spend 3 weeks at the coast down in Texas and you start seeing little rust spots on your car frame, right?
Yeah.
Because the air is just so full of salt, and salt is so highly corrosive. Well, imagine you have, in the grand scheme of things, salt water in the ocean, as compared to the ocean of salt water under the ground. This is hypersaline. And so
Yeah.
you have that touch in the pipe and coming up the wellbore. They replace that casing all the time, and that
Wow.
pipe all the time. And that's what makes those things so expensive. So I think the resource itself, they're not seeing a decline. They'll see a decline in reservoir pressures, because of where they're producing water from. But from a, you know, if you're looking at it, thinking of like a BOE perspective, the water you're getting out is still having the same amount of milligrams per liter. It's just the amount of water you're able to get because of pressure issues. And so they end up going and putting another straw in the ground because of the way reservoir pressure is
That
as
makes
produced
sense.
wastewater produced.
Yeah.